It's at the end of the table, I think. You got it? Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's Parsha Vayechi. Tonight's class is sponsored by Yehudas Greenberg in honor of her birthday, which was today. Love the 6th day of Tevis. She have a Shnas Hatzlacha, successful year in everything she does, and everything she wants, and all good things. Okay, Parsha Vayechi is the last Parsha of Chumash Bereshis. So there's a famous story based on the first pasuk of the Parsha. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim shva'asrei shana. Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim 17 years. So the Baal HaTurim says that, what does it mean Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim? He says the best years of Yaakov Avinu's life was the 17 years he lived in Mitzrayim. Other people in a similar vein want to say the word Vayechi, Vav Yud Ches Yud, equals 34. Because the best years of Yaakov's, don't forget, he had a brother Esav, and then he was by Lavan's house. So when Yosef was born, until Yosef was 17, life was good. You know, he had Yosef, and then Yosef was sold as a slave. So Vayechi equals 34. So Yaakov's good Vayechi, you know, Yaakov lived really properly 34 years. But the Baal HaTurim says the best of those years were the 17 years he lived in Mitzrayim. So the story is told when the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe, was a little boy. He came home, he was raised by his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, and he asked his grandfather, I don't understand. How could you say Yaakov Avinu, what's called Bechir Shabbat, the chosen of all patriarchs, his best years are in Mitzrayim? I mean, how could you say such a thing? So, simply the answer is, I mean, the Alter Rebbe told him a deeper answer, but he says, simple answer is because, listen, he was in Egypt, he had his whole family together, it was the first time, and everybody were tzaddikim, you know, they were all, even in Mitzrayim, they lived as Jews, you know. So that's the simple thing. But the question is, it was good physically because he had the mishpacha. But how can you say Yaakov Avinu's life was more of a spiritual type of a life? How could you say that Yaakov Avinu's spiritual life was best in Egypt? So the Alter Rebbe told him like this, that through this, that Yaakov, before he came down to Mitzrayim, sent Yehuda to open up a yeshiva. Yehuda Sholach Lefan of Goshen, we learned the last week's Parsha. He sent Yehuda to open up a yeshiva in Egypt, and he learned Torah in Egypt. The Jews flourished with Torah in Egypt. So therefore, he explains like this: the ultimate, Shlomo Melech says a pasuk, Re'isi sheyesh yisrein lochochma min asichlus and kayelis. Shlomo Melech says, I've seen there's an advantage of wisdom over sichlus, over stupidity, like the advantage of light over dark. Now, it's a very brilliant statement, but I don't need Shlomo Melech to tell me that intelligence is better than stupidity and light is better than dark. I don't need Shlomo Melech to tell me that. So Chassidus explains, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, what it means is, it doesn't say, grammatically as you would have said, I see there's an advantage of sichlus al ha-chochma. I mean, yisrin l'chochma al ha-sichlus. Chochma is better than foolishness. Ki yisrin na'ur al ha-choshech. Like light is better than dark. But that's not what the pasuk says. The pasuk says, Yerisi sheyas yisrein l'chochma min ha-sichlus means, Shlomo Melech says, I see the ultimate greatness of wisdom when it comes min ha-sichlus, when it comes from foolishness. Of course, I don't need Shlomo Melech to tell me brilliance is better than foolishness. What Shlomo Melech is actually saying is, when stupidity becomes brilliance, like Yisrin Ha'or, like the advantage of light, not al ha'cheshach over darkness, min ha'cheshach, meaning when darkness itself is transformed to light, That's the ultimate level of light. Yes, light is better than darkness. We know that. We don't need Shlomo Melech to tell me that. But that's not what Shlomo Melech is saying. Shlomo Melech is saying there's an advantage of wisdom. The ultimate level of wisdom is when wisdom comes through foolishness.
What does that mean?
I'll explain to you. When darkness becomes light, when darkness becomes light, that's the ultimate level of light.
So when Yaakov and his family are learning Torah in the darkness.
One sec. So we have a similar thing, and the neshama coming into a body. The neshama, before it comes into the body, is sitting in Gan Eden, paradise. It's unbelievable. It's basking in godliness. And now the neshama comes into the world. All the difficulties comes into physical body. Yetzer hara, corrupt world. It's pretty bad. Yeah. So why does the neshama come into the world? And what's the uniqueness of a neshama in a body over, for instance, a malach, an angel? Yet it says that as great as an angel is, it says in the Medrash, if there would be 10 Jews sitting in a room, not even learning, just 10 Jews sitting in a room, the Kedusha is so great, a malach would explode. A malach this is not 10 Jews learning Torah, 10 Jews sitting drinking coffee. The Kedusha of 10 Jews is so great that even a malach would explode. So what's the uniqueness of a neshama in a body? And a neshama in Gan Eden has no yetzer hara, no free choice, and nothing. A malach, an angel, has no yetzer hara, has no free choice. Mm-hmm. The ultimate greatness is when somebody has the ability to do bad, has the free choice, and not only that, the evil is very tempting. Darkness is very tempting. Not normal darkness of world is very tempting. And yet a Jew still goes and keeps Torah mitzvahs. That's the ultimate level of Kedusha. And that's what the Alter Rebbe said to the Tzemach Tzedek. Yes, the question is, how could Yaakov in Egypt live his best life spiritually when Egypt is so corrupt? So the Alter Rebbe said to him, the fact that he opened the yeshiva there and they learned Torah. So what was the greatness, the best years of Yaakov's life? Because he was able to transform Egypt into a place of Torah. That is the ultimate level of Vayechi. That's like the neshama coming into a body can attain a level of godliness that a neshama Gan Eden can't attain because there's no free will there. There's no evil there. That's one thing. Another thing in the beginning of the Parsha, Yaakov calls in Yosef, all the way at the beginning of the Parsha. It says, Vayikra v'yimei Yisrael lamus. Yaakov was about to die. He calls his son Yosef and he says, if I find favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh, meaning an expression like Rashi says of swearing. I want you to do with me a real chesed, because it's known that chesed shel emes is what you do with dead people. So Rashi over here says like this. Why is it called chesed ba'emes? So Rashi says, when I do a favor to a living person, subconsciously I expect a favor, you owe me one. When you do it to dead people, you're not going to get anything back. You're not expecting anything back. So that's the real chesed. It's emes, because you're not doing it to get something back out of it. There's a gain out of it. You're doing it because this is what it is. So he says, I want you to swear to me and not to bury me in Egypt. And I want you to carry me out. And Yosef says, I'm going to do like you said. So Yaakov said, no, he's shavali. I want you to swear. I don't trust you. I don't trust you by saying to me that you're going to, I want you to swear. And he swore. So it's interesting. The Gemara says, simple pshat over here is, there's a Gemara in Saita. It says like this, when Yaakov died, Yosef wanted to bury his father back in Egypt, like he told him he will. So Paro said, I'm not letting you go. He was afraid Yosef wouldn't come back. He says, I'm not letting you go. So Yosef said, but I swore to my father I swore that I'm going to do it. He said, break your vow. Paro said, break your vow. So Yosef said to him, he blackmailed him. He said, what the Gemara says in Saita. Yosef said to him, if I'm going to break this vow, I'll break another vow. What happened? When Yosef was taken out of the pit to interpret Paro's dream, and he did, and Paro was very impressed with him, he wanted to make him the viceroy. So what happened, the anti-Semites, the anti-Semite Egyptians that existed then also, says, how do you make an Eved, a slave, a king? You can't make a slave a king. He said, no, I see in him. He said, but he doesn't know 70 languages. And the rule was in Egypt, to be a king, you had to know 70 languages. And this guy doesn't know 70 languages. So the Gemara says, Gavriel came that night and taught him 70 languages. He taught him 70 languages. It says Yosef couldn't remember them. You know, so you could have a brilliant head. 70 languages in one night is a little tough. Okay? So he added a hey to his name. In fact, in the Yom Chamishi, we say Yom Chamishi b'Shabbos, it says Eidus b'Yahoisef Samai, not Yosef, Yahoisef, he added a hey. Svasali Adaiti Eshma, over there speaking about the languages. So they added a hey to Yosef's name, and Yosef learned overnight 70 languages. The next day, Pari came to test him. Pari knew 70 languages. So any language Pari spoke, Yosef answered. But Yosef knew Hebrew, and Pari didn't know Hebrew. So by definition, by law, that would throw out Pari, and Yosef would become the king. So Pari said to him, I'm begging you, swear to me that you will not tell anybody the language. So Yosef said, okay, I'll swear to you. Then when Pari said to Yosef, break your vow, so no, he says, no problem. I'm going to break my other vow and I'll become king and you'll become a shmata, become a rag. That's it. So he had no choice. He blackmailed him. Okay? So there's a few questions in this story in a deeper level. First of all, okay, that was in a physical sense, he didn't want Pari not to let him go. But why did Yaakov not trust Yosef that he's going to do it? And we find another interesting thing over here. Yaakov told Yosef, the second I die, take me back to Egypt. Like he did. After they had the mourning period in Egypt, Yaakov was taken out. And in fact, the Mefarshim explained when Yosef said, Anechi esa kidvarecha, in Pasuk Lamed, so the Mefarshim say that what did Yosef really tell him? I'm going to do like you did also. I'm also going to be taken out. But what happened? The difference was like this. Yaakov was taken out right away. Yosef was put into the last pasuk in Vayechi. Vayisam ba'arin b'Mitzrayim. He was buried in Egypt. And Yosef told the brothers, Ki ashbei in Parsha B'Shalach, Yosef made the brothers swear that when they go out of Egypt, eventually they're going to take his bones with them. And they took his bones out. Where were Yosef's bones buried? No, there's two opinions in the Gemara. In the Gemara and Satan, there's two opinions. One is they put it in the Nile, the Nilus as it's called, because it was the irrigation, so Yosef's coffin would be a blessing for the Nilus. Another opinion says he was buried in a military cemetery. So now that the Jews had to go out of Egypt, this is what the Gemara says in Satan. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know where's Yosef buried. So he went to the only living member that was still alive at that time, was Serach Bas Asher. Right. Asher's daughter Serach. She came down to Egypt and she lived, she went out of Egypt. There's a lot of different opinions. One opinion said she never died, whatever. She had a good bracha from Yaakov Avinu. She was the one that told Yaakov Yosef's alive. Right. What? Yeah. They say it's in... There's a monument in our... Yeah. So, whatever, I've heard that. Anyway, so Sarah Bas Asher was the one that told Yaakov that Yosef is alive. She knew how to play the harp, and the brothers told not that Yaakov shouldn't get a heart attack. He said, go play, sing a song, Old Yosef Chai, make up a song, and slowly it penetrated that he realized that he's alive. So now, Sarah Bas Asher knew where he was. So one opinion says she told him he's in the Nile, not in denial, in the Nile.
Got it.
So what happened was, and this is an interesting story. According to the Gemara doesn't say this, but the Medrash, the Gemara says the story. Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Nile, and said the following: listen, now is the time the Jews are being redeemed, and the Jews swore to you that you're going to take your bones. Either show yourself, or we're freed from the oath. We're not. Either show yourself and come up, or another opinion says Moshe Rabbeinu wrote on a gold plaque, Ali Shor. Yosef is called Shor. Ali Shor, ox, come up. And the Yosef came up. And some people say that the bad guys found that piece of metal, Ali Shor, and that's what made the Egel Azov. They threw it into the fire, and a baby ox, the Egel, came up because of this paper, not the paper, it was on the metal. The plaque that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote, Ali Shor, so that was the cause of the Egel. Anyway, another opinion says he was buried in a royal cemetery, and nobody knew where. So Moshe Rabbeinu came to the cemetery, according to the other opinion, and he said the same thing. Yosef, the Jews are about to go out of Egypt, and either show yourself. So all of a sudden, the bones of Yosef shook in the grave. So they knew that was Yosef's thing. So it says I'm going to also do it. But the difference is like this, and this we need to understand. Yaakov Avinu wanted, as soon as he died, to be taken out. Yosef, on the other hand, said, no, the Jews will be in Egypt, put me in the Nile or in the cemetery, and when you go out, take me with you. Why didn't Yaakov also say, take me out when you go out? Why was it Yaakov Avinu wanted to go out right away, and Yosef was willing to wait until the Jews went out? So the difference is like this. There's a few answers, but there's 2 points over here I want to make. One answer is that Yaakov really had no connection to Egypt. In fact, Yaakov Avinu was afraid to go down to Egypt. In last week's Parsha, Hashem said, Al tira yerd merda Mitzrayim, don't be afraid to go down to Egypt. I'm going to go down with you. I'm going to go up with you. Right? That's what Hashem told Yaakov Avinu. So he went down. Yaakov Avinu really was afraid to go down to Egypt. Why? Because Yaakov Avinu is spirituality. Yaakov Avinu is the world of Atzilus. Like the shepherd, the brothers were shepherds. They had nothing to do with the world, and that's why he didn't believe Yosef was alive. We learned, right? Because he couldn't imagine. So Yaakov said, I can't stay in Egypt. I get me out of here. I have no connection to Egypt. I don't want to deal with it. But Yosef, on the other hand, did have a connection to Egypt. So therefore, Yaakov made Yosef swear, not only because of power, in a deeper sense, because Yaakov thought Yosef would keep Yaakov in Mitzrayim, that Yaakov should affect Mitzrayim. And Yaakov was afraid that, logically, Yosef might be right. Yaakov was so great. He's the Ovis. Yosef, maybe he'll be able to influence the Yiddishkeit in Mitzrayim. So Yaakov Avinu says, I know your logic, what you're going to think. I don't want no logics. I don't want any logics. I want you to swear to, what's a vow? A swear is when it doesn't make sense. When things make sense, you don't need a vow. Like you said, why is marriage called a vow? If you're friends, you don't need a vow. What do you need a vow for? A vow means, even when things go south, go sour, go south, then just the vow keeps you together. That's what a shvur is. So Yaakov Avinu understood, Yosef, because of his level, might want to keep me here. And I don't want to do that. Okay, that's what, but in a deeper sense, there's another beautiful explanation here also that Rebbe says, and that is as follows. A Rebbe never leaves his flock. The Gemara speaks about Yaakov, we'll see later, But Yaakov Avinu Moshe Rabbeinu. The Raya does leyazev es tzein mar isei. A leader never leaves his flock, not when he's alive and not when he's dead. The Gemara says also in Seita and Talmud, whatever, different places, that ma kan emed meshamish, just like Moshe Rabbeinu Yaakov Avinu served the Jews here, aflahal even up there. Tzaddikim, when they die, they still take care of the flock. So Yaakov, though, he was the Rebbe of the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Who was the leader of Mitzrayim? Yosef was the Rebbe. Okay, Yosef's Chassidim were in Mitzrayim. Yaakov's Chassidim were in Egypt. So Yaakov says, in my lifetime, I was the leader in Eretz Yisrael. Just the last 17 years he came, but 130 years he lived in Eretz Yisrael. He says, I want to be buried where my Chassidim are, in Eretz Yisrael. Yosef, on the other hand, says, no, I can't be taken out right away. What's going to be with my Chassidim here in Mitzrayim? How can I leave them? So Yosef said, as long as the Jews are in Mitzrayim, I want to be there. When they go out, there's nobody left. So take me with you. That's the difference between Yaakov and Yosef. And then Yosef was with them. Then there's another famous story in this week's Parsha. When you learn things a little bit deeper, they make much more sense. There's a story with Menashe and Ephraim. Okay, Yosef brings the kids. Menashe is the firstborn. Ephraim is not the firstborn. Yosef puts Menashe on Yaakov's right, Ephraim on Yaakov's left, and he'll put the right hand on the older one. Yaakov switches the hands. Sikal es yod. Rashi would seichel, not stam, made a mistake. Sikal es yodov. He said, no, I know, I know all about it, but I'm giving a blessing to Ephraim. Tzaddikim, one fundamental rule, tzaddikim don't make mistakes. Okay? Yosef maintained that Menashe should get the bracha. Yaakov maintained, the right-hand bracha. They both got brachas, but Yaakov maintained that Ephraim should get the bracha. So it's not, God forbid, Yosef made a mistake or Yaakov made a mistake. Yaakov's level, Ephraim is greater. Yosef's level, Menashe is greater. And therefore, as far as Yosef, it's just they do different, like in the halacha, you have different opinions. There was an opinion over here, who is greater, Menashe or Ephraim? And what's the point? It's like this. Yosef was in Egypt, and he didn't become corrupt in Egypt. Why didn't he become corrupt? Because he always remembered his father's house. Remember we discussed the other week, why was he called, if Ephraim is greater, why was Menashe the firstborn? Then make Ephraim the firstborn if he's greater. The answer is, Menashe and Ephraim represents two ways in functioning as a Jew in the world. Menashe said, Kineshani Elikim, basically means, I shouldn't forget where I came from. Ephraim is, Ki Efrani Elikim Beretzoni, he was very successful in Mitzrayim. Yosef, who lived in Egypt as the king, his success could only be not forgetting where he came from. Even when Yaakov came down to Egypt, he wasn't running the country. He was in Goshen learning Torah with everybody, with Ephraim, with all the other kids. He was in the yeshiva. Yaakov was not running Mitzrayim. Yosef was running Mitzrayim. In order for Yosef to run Mitzrayim and not be affected, he had to remember where he came from. Kineshani Elikim. I have to remember my house of Yaakov, because once you forget where you're coming from, who's sending you, then you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it. Yaakov, on the other hand, was not involved in Egypt that he had to not forget where he came from. Yaakov wanted, like we said, the best years in Egypt, that even in a country, Ki Efrani Alakim Be'eretzonya, that Hashem made me successful to build a Jewish nation. Where was the Jewish nation built? In Egypt. In Egypt, that's where the Jewish nation was built. It started from 70, and they left Egypt 600,000. That's where the Jewish nation was built. So Yosef, in order for Yosef's level, he had to have Menashe first. Yaakov's opinion, though, no, the main thing is Ephraim. Yaakov didn't need Menashe because Yaakov never was involved in Egypt, that he should lose it. So it's not Chas Sholem that Yaakov and Yosef were arguing and one of them made a mistake. Yaakov understood, both Yosef understood from his perspective, in order for him to be in Egypt and to remain a frum Jew, so to speak, he had to remember where he came from. He had to remember Keneshan Elakim. Yaakov, on the other hand, he came down to Mitzrayim to build the Bnei Yisrael, the Klal Yisrael. That's what he had to do. Yeah, it's just two different levels of what it is.
Did Yaakov foresee the future of Menashe and Ephraim, what comes out of them?
Yeah, that's why for a minute he was hesitating, because he saw the Rishonim coming out of Menashe. Rashi says, here. Here, in Pasuk Ches of Perik Mem Ches, Vayechi Yisrael b'nei Yosef, and he said, "Who are these?" Bikesh levarcham. Rashi says from the Medrash, he wanted to bless them. V'nistalka Shechina mimenu, and the Shechina left Yaakov Avinu. Why? Because Yeravam and Achav, two wicked kings, came from Ephraim, and Yehu Banav, also wicked kings, came from Menashe. So Yaakov's seeing he's about to bless kids, and he says, "Oh my God, where did these guys come from?" So Yosef said, "Mi Ela, like, why should I bless them?" So he showed Shtad Edis and Shtad Ksuva, Davin, and Yaakov got back to Ruach HaKodesh. So Yaakov was hesitant to bless them because he right away saw that they were sinners. I mean, the sinners came from them. So why should he bless them? So Yosef Davin, he showed him the Ksuba, that they're legit, and he wanted, and he gave him, he Davin, and he, excuse me, and he gave him the bracha. But now, there's another thing in the Parsha. When Yaakov is dying already, here, Perik Mem Tes, it says, Vayikra Yaakov Abanav, and he said, Vayosef Agido Lachem. Let me tell you what's going to happen in the end of days. So Rashi says, Bikesh Yaakov, it's from the Gemara in Psachim, Bikesh Yaakov Legalis Saketz. Yaakov Avinu really wanted to tell him Mashiach is coming. V'nistalka mimenu Shechina, and the Shechina left him. Okay? Now there's two opinions, by the way. What do you mean? Which cats? The cats of Mashiach or the cats of going out of Egypt? There's two opinions.
Oh,
yeah. But the question over here is a bigger question. Let's say he's talking about Mashiach. Okay? From this time to Mashiach comes, let's say he's coming today. It's still something like 3,000 years, right?
Maybe back then.
From then to now.
Oh, yeah.
So Yaakov Avinu wanted to tell his children, hey, Mashiach's coming. Yeah, he wanted to tell them Mashiach's coming. Yeah, in other words, according to that, let's take it, if it would have worked. Hey guys, let me tell you something. Mashiach's coming in 3,000 years. How exciting. Even if you want to tell them the cats, the going out of Egypt, it was still reduced. They were there 210 years. Yaakov in Egypt was there 17 years. So it's still over 200 years. Can you imagine? Hey guys, I'm telling you guys, Mashiach's coming in 200 years. Very good. Shkoyach. I mean, like, what is he? Why would Yaakov even want to tell the cats?
But we had a prophecy that we're going to come out of Babel in 70 years.
And that was true, though.
Right.
They came out of Babel in 70 years, but that wasn't Mashiach. That wasn't Mashiach. So why would Yaakov want to tell his kids something that's going to happen in 3,000 years from now, even 200 years from now? So again, the Rebbe explains what Yaakov Avinu wanted to accomplish is like this. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says they has contradictions. One pasuk says, "Aru imanana shmaya." One pasuk says, "Mashiach's coming on a cloud." Aru imanana shmaya. The clouds are there. Another pasuk says, "Ani reichev ala chamor." And poor man on a donkey. Okay, we could change it a little bit. The clouds are planes, and the donkeys are a Tesla. I mean, whatever it is, a Rolls Royce, whatever. So the Gemara asks, it's a contradiction between the two. Then there's another pasuk. It's one of the Haftarahs, the last words of the Haftarah. It says about Mashiach's coming. It says, "Be'ita achishana." Be'ita means Mashiach will come in its time. Achishana, I'll hurry it up. So the Gemara asks, if it's on time, it's not hurried. If it's hurried, it's not on time. Like, what does it mean? So to both questions, the Gemara says, Zacha, if the Jews merit, it means they behave, it's going to be Achishana, Mashiach will come earlier than the time. And also, that's how the Gemara answers, then he'll come on the clouds. Lei Zacha, if the Jews will not merit, he'll come by the year 6,000, he got to come anyway, right? Whatever. And also, then he'll come on a donkey, not a... In fact, the Rebbe answers a similar question. There's a lot of answers to that question. The Rambam says Mashiach is going to build the Beis HaMikdash. There's a Medrash Rashi brings down in Sukkah that says it's going to come down from heaven. So how do you reckon? Is Mashiach building it? Or... There's one answer the Rebbe gives is it's going to come down from heaven, but Mashiach is going to put on the finishing touches. And there's a Gemara in Bava Basra that says the guy that finishes the home is like he built it. So therefore, Mashiach, the how Beis HaMikdash will come down from heaven, and Mashiach will put the finishing touch. So it's like Mashiach built it. But then the Rebbe said it could be also if the Jews merit, it will come down from heaven. If the Jews don't merit, Mashiach will build it. Again, the same thing similar to the Gemaras. Okay. So it is like this. The Rebbe explains why in the world would Yaakov want to tell the Yidden that when Mashiach's coming. So the Rebbe explains Yaakov Avinu wanted. You could look at it two ways. One way is he wanted to get an excitement about Mashiach. But another thing is what Yaakov Avinu wanted to accomplish is that the Jews should shape up that Mashiach should come even sooner. That's what he wanted to tell the Jews, that you have the ability to bring Mashiach sooner. And that's why he wanted to, but like Rashi says, Gemara says, the Shechina left him, and he's talked other things. He didn't tell Mashiach is coming.
Joseph also wanted to make it come quicker,
Yeah.
right? By doing the bris on
the Egyptians,
on the
yeah.
Egyptian.
Everybody wanted to make it work. There's a lot. The Rambam said a very sharp expression about people that make a case. They figure out what year Mashiach's coming. The Pulchei Ribam, their heart should blow up, so to speak, of people that figure out what year Mashiach's coming. Yet we find many Gedolei Yisrael that said a time when Mashiach's coming. They gave years in time for when Mashiach's coming. So again, the Rebbe answers it in a Sikha in a different place, but he says that they didn't say that this is the time when Mashiach comes. They said this is an opportune time that Mashiach is more prone to come. So if you work on it, you can, not that that's when Mashiach's coming. Because if you say Mashiach's coming in this year, so what's going to be until then? It's very depressing.
The Rebbe always advocated that. Though.
Yeah, that Mashiach should come Achishan in a way of making it quicker than the normal thing. Okay, now it says like this. Yaakov says to Yosef, going back a little, Perek Memches, Pasik Chav Beis. This is a very interesting Pasik. Yaakov says to Yosef, Ani nasati l'cha Shechem echad al achecha. One opinion says it means actually Shechem. Okay, Asher alokachti miyada Amori, that I took from the Amorites, the city of Shechem. They were the nation Amorim in Canaan. Becharbi ubekashti, with my sword and my bow and arrow. Okay, so Yaakov said that I'm giving it to Yosef. That was the one I took, with my bow, my sword, and my bow and arrow. Meaning, I fought them, and that's how I got it. Okay. So the Zohar says an interesting things. The Zohar says, what does Bechabi or Bekashti mean? With my Charbi, my sword means davening, and Kashti means my learning Torah. How did I capture it from the Amori, the city of Shechem? Bechabi Bebausi or Betzulusi, with my davening and my learning. Okay? Now it's interesting. Everything is in a personal level, right? The word Amori is the same letters as the word Ramai, swindler.
Mm-hmm.
Ramai, the Gemara says, the Yetzer Hara is a swindler and a liar and a cheater. He convinces the person, no, it's good this way. So the Ramai, Amori, refers to the Yetzer Hara. But there's two ways of conquering the Yetzer Hara. One is Becharbi or Bekashti. What's the difference if you fight an enemy? The Yetzer is our enemy, right? Alev Echad, the Yetzer is our enemy. What's the difference if you fight with a sword or you fight with a bow and arrow? When you fight with a sword, you can't fight long distance. You staying there, I stay here, and we'll fight with a sword. I mean, the swords got to touch each other. You have to be in close proximity to the person to fight with a sword. Bow and arrow, you could shoot from the distance. Right? What does this mean that the Zohar says, Charbi, my sword, is davening, and Kashti, my arrow, refers to learning? What's the difference in conquering the Yetzer Hara? A person conquers the Yetzer Hara, whether he's doing it with his sword, so to speak, with his davening, or with his learning. So it's very fundamental. That's why I want to elaborate on it. It's very basic. What's the difference between davening and learning? The two primary things. Okay, you have three pillars: Torah, Vayechi, Sodom. You have Torah, mitzvahs. But two things in Yiddishkeit is Torah and Tefillah.
That's good.
So, in fact, when the Alter Rebbe was looking before he became a disciple of the Mizritch Maggid, the Alter Rebbe was looking for a path in life, looking for a derech in serving Hashem. And he heard there's two places. In Vilna, by the Vilna Gaon, they teach you learn how to learn. And in Mizritch, by the Mizritch Maggid, they teach you how to daven. So the Alter Rebbe said, learning, I know a little. Davening, I know nothing. So thank God he went to Mizritch. Thank God that's why we're Chassidim, because the Alter Rebbe went to Mizritch. He almost left there, but he was in Mizritch, and where they teach the concept of davening. That's why for Chassidim, davening is a very important aspect of life. So what is it? What's the difference? The difference is like this. When I learn Torah, I'm not fighting anybody. I'm bringing God's wisdom, God's Kedusha, I'm bringing it down to me. That's right. I take God's wisdom, I bring it into my head. I'm not battling with my Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara might even like it. It's intellectual. Davening, though, is in a different way. Davening, though, is in a way that you're dealing directly with the Yetzer Hara. The whole meditation of davening is trying to convince the Yetzer Hara that God is good. That's what, remember, we learned in Parsha's Vayechi, the dream of Yaakov Avinu was actually the ladder going up and down is a level of davening, of tefillah. Tefillah does not mean prayer. In English, it's translated, give me a prayer book. Tefillah does not mean prayer. The word for prayer in Hebrew is bakasha. Tefillah, Rashi says, naftali, tefillah, is two things: either to judge, or Naftali Rashi says loshen chibur. Chibur. There's a Gemara Mishnah that says hatayfel kli cheres. If an earthenware vessel was broken about tumah and you glue it, tayfel means you glue. It's binding. Davening is a direct binding with Hashem, meaning first you meditate into God's greatness. All Psukei de Zimra speaks about how great Hashem is, the moon and the sun, everybody's praising Hashem, everybody's praising Hashem. And then you come to the second part of davening, right? Then you talk about the angels. This angel is screaming Kaddish and this angel is screaming Baruch. What does that have to do with me? So it says in Kabbalah that the source of the animal soul is mishmarei ha'ifanim, for the sediment, the junk of the malachim called ifanim, like oil has sediment at the bottom, wine. There's this shmarim of the ifanim, means the sediment of the junk, the lowest level of the ifanim, b'chayis HaKodesh, that is the source of the animal soul. So therefore, Psukei de Zimra first goes like this. We're talking to the Nefesh Habamitz. We're trying to convince him. Listen, guy, you gotta realize God's great, and we're nothing. There's a din in Shulchan Aruch. Before you daven, it's a clear din in Ramad. It says in Shulchan Aruch, before a person davens, they have to meditate in Gadlus Hakel v'Shiflus Ha'adam. You have to meditate into the greatness of God and the lowness of man. That's a din in Shulchan Aruch that you need to meditate before you daven. Okay? So you have these two ways. Davening is direct combat. You're fighting hand to hand with the Yetzer Hara, right? To overcome it. Kashti is distance. That's Torah. You're not fighting directly with the Yetzer Hara like davening is. When you're trying to convince the Yetzer Hara to refine your character. Learning doesn't do that. Learning brings wisdom. In fact, learning could cause ego. Right? It could cause, I'm brilliant, I'm smart. And, So these are the two ways that we conquer the Ramai. Yaakov Avinu says, "Shalakachti miyado amedi," the Ramai, the swindle, the Yetzer Hara. How do I do it? B'charbi u'b'kashti, with my sword and my arrow, meaning davening and learning. These are the two ways to deal with Hashem. I spoke about this a number of times in Shul. Where do you see this in world? In sports. In sports. I know you guys, the American.
Right?
Huh? Football. In football, you're trying to win over your enemy, correct? Now you have the running game and you have the passing game. Those are the two games. For the people that online that don't know what I'm talking about, you should be blessed that you don't know what I'm talking about. But I grew up American kid in Chicago. We played baseball, we played football. Anyway, in football, you have the running game. What's the running game? Your mom is banging into each other. It's close contact. That's Charbi. And Kashti is the passing game. It's the long. Each one has an advantage over the other. They're both. You need both. You can't win a football game without both, right? Whoever knows anything about sports. So what you have, the Yaakov Avinu is telling him that you want to. He's telling Klal Yisrael. He's talking to his kids, right? He says you should know in order to conquer the evil of the Yetzer Hara, you need the Charbi and you need the Kashti. And that's why he's telling it to Yosef when they're giving him the city of Shechem. Okay, another thing. Okay, we'll do this. The other second thing first. Yaakov, when he's talking to Yosef at the beginning of the Parsha, he says like this: "I know you're upset with me." In Perek Mem Ches Pasuk Zayin. Okay? After he says like this, Vani b'vayim Padan, when I was coming from Padan, Meisalai Rachel died, and I buried there, right? And Rashi quotes that Yaakov said to you, I know you're upset with me. I know you're angry. Why didn't they bring Rachel back to Mars and Machpelah? Where everybody else is buried. He says, you should know that Al Pi Adibur, I buried her because Hashem told me to. Why? Because Rashi says the whole story. Nebuchadnezzar, this wicked king, took the Jews into exile. And they passed by Rachel's kever Rachel. And Rachel went, Kol B'Rama Nishma. So many songs written on this word. Kol B'Rama Nishma. Rachel Mevakol B'Ner. Rachel is crying for her children. Yeah? So Yaakov says to Yosef, I know you're upset with me, but it wasn't my choice. Hashem told me to do it because this is for the benefit of Klal Yisrael. Later on in history, they'll need Rachel to daven for them, to cry out for them. So what's the difference? Okay, again, in a spiritual sense, Yaakov is buried in Marsa Machpelah in Eretz Yisrael, and Rachel is out to help her kids. Why wasn't Yaakov buried there to help his kids? Yeah, huh?
Rachel is selfless.
And Yaakov wasn't?
Yeah.
But he's a leader.
Okay, so 1 second. You're saying good. I mean, you just let me explain what the story is. The difference between men and women in Yiddishkeit. Okay? There are different functions. Men have an obligation to keep all 613 mitzvahs. I mean, today we don't have most of them we don't have. But you have to keep all 613 mitzvahs. Women are freed from a lot of mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm.
Any mitzvah connected to time, they don't have to do. Now, some people will think, and we had this a lot in the 60s when we used to go out as Bacham to speak for these conservative and reform teenagers. You say, you see, women are second-class citizens in Judaism. They don't have to do all these mitzvahs. You see, they're looked down upon. The men have to, do all these things, and the women don't have to do it. Okay, that's wonderful. The reality is, I'll never forget this. I once was speaking for such a group, and I said to them, I gave them what the explanation Chassidus says. I said, the purpose of mitzvahs is to connect the Jew to Hashem. Mitzvah means tzavsa v'chiba, binding and connection. That's the purpose of Yiddishkeit, of mitzvahs. So I said, men need the mitzvahs to connect them to Hashem. Women, the fact that they don't have the mitzvahs doesn't mean they're second. On the contrary, it means they don't need that mitzvah. Those mitzvahs, they don't need them to bind themselves to Hashem. They're self-bound. Okay? So I was speaking to them that this is, on the contrary, this is the greatness of the woman over the man. The man needs mitzvahs to connect, and the women are self-connected. So I'll never forget this. Is going back quite a while. So this girl gets up and she says, beautiful explanation. I have one question to ask you. Do you believe what you just said?
Yeah.
I said, oh, of course. I mean, what's the question? But that's the difference. So, and another interesting thing in Yiddishkeit, religion follows the mother, right? If you're Jewish or not, it's up to the mother. Which tribe you come from, or whether you're Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, or more detailed, which tribe you come from, that's up to the father. What's the difference? The essence of the child, whether you're a Jew or not, is your essence. Whether you're Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, I mean, that's the revealed part of it. That's not the essence. The essence is that you're a Jew. The essence of the Jew, that's up to the mother. Because the mother is the essence of the Jew. The man is the concept of shleimus, completeness, by keeping all Torah mitzvahs. So that's what Yaakov is saying to Yosef about Rachel. Rachel is the essence of Klal Yisrael. Therefore, when Klal Yisrael is in trouble, it's Rachel that's going to save them. Not Yaakov, not anybody else. Rachel is going to save them because she is the essence. They say in Yiddish to explain Yiddish Shemama, a Jewish mother, that the Yiddish Shemama, that is the essence of the Bnei Yisrael, and that's why Rachel had to be buried, because she would be the one that would save the Jews. Yaakov Avinu, men, their union is Torah mitzvahs, their union is completing the completeness between the Jew and Hashem.
When it comes to pain also, the women have a different perception than the men.
Of pain?
Like pain.
Yeah.
So if they're gonna go through that difficulty, she's gonna do a better job.
You know what they say? If men would give birth to children, there would be one kid per family. That's it.
But also they say that they perceive the pain, they actually feel it versus a man that just intellectually feels it.
There's a lot of difference between men and women. A lot. No, and all these types. I'm talking not only from Venus and Mars, but
No, really does.
me. Okay, so that's why Rachel's inyan, the concept of Rachel is mevaka al banah, to stick up for her children, to cry for her children. So that's what Yaakov is saying. Don't, in Yiddish, they're saying, don't be upset with me, because that's just the way it is. That Rachel was the one that saved the Jewish people. Okay, another interesting thing in the Parsha, we'll do one more thing. At the end of the Parsha, Yaakov says, yeah, one second, all the way at the end. It says, I'm sorry, no. Yeah, Perak Nun. The Yipol, I mean, the passage right before that. Pasuk Lamed Gimel and Perak Memtes. Vayichal Yaakov l'Savas Banov. Yaakov finished commanding his children. Vayasef Raglav, he gathered his feet to the bed. Vayigba and Vayosef Lamavi was gathered back to his nation. It doesn't say Yaakov Avinu died.
Right.
Doesn't say Yaakov Avinu died. So the Gemara says in Talmud, Yaakov Avinu lemes. Yaakov Avinu did not die. Okay? So the Gemara asks, but it says they embalmed him, they buried him. I mean, what do you mean he didn't die? Okay? So the Gemara answers, this famous Gemara, Ma'zara b'chaim afu b'chaim. Just like his kids are alive, he is also alive. Okay? We find the same thing the Gemara says, Moshe lemes. Moshe Benu didn't die. It says, Vayom as Yosef Alamov, that he did die. So the Gemara says that just like we quoted the Gemara before, Ma kan Emed and Meshamish, just like Moshe Benu serves the Jews here, he's serving the Jews there. Okay? So the Gemara says about two people that didn't die. Yaakov Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? The difficulty with that to understand is that l'cha'era, no tzaddik dies. Death is only the body. The neshama lives on. Right? The spiritual life, the Zohar says, and we say it when you go to the oil, it's in Perek Chav Zayin of Igersa Kodesh of Tanya. The Alter Rebbe quotes the Zohar that says that a tzaddik, when he dies, ishtakach yater mi bechayein. By halma yater mi bechayein. A tzaddik after he dies is more in this world than he was when he was alive. Mm-hmm. Why? And he explained, the life of a tzaddik is spiritual. Okay? When the neshama of a tzaddik is in a body, he's limited. He has to eat and drink. He has to sleep. He can only be in one place at one time. Right? Like Eliyahu comes to all Britain. He's in a million places at the same time. Yeah? He comes to every Seder, whatever. So a tzaddik, every tzaddik really doesn't die. His physical body dies, but tzaddik doesn't die. What's unique about Yaakov Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu? That it says that they didn't die. Okay, so it says like this. Moshe Rabbeinu, let's go in order. Yaakov Avinu, the Gemara is saying what it means, Yaakov Avinu lemes, even physically he didn't die. What do you mean physically he didn't die? They buried him in Mars Machpelah. I mean, he's dead. Yeah, you say Kaddish for him. I mean, Whatever. What it means is Yaakov Avinu is physically alive through his children, the Gemara says. Mazara b'chayim afu b'chayim. That means when Yaakov Avinu, this was the uniqueness of Yaakov Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu, that even though they physically died, they're still physically alive through the children. But Yaakov Avinu, Mazara b'chayim afu b'chayim. As long as Yaakov Avinu's children are living in Yaakov Avinu's footsteps, Yaakov is alive through the children. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Zohar says, is pashtusa the Moshe b'chol dar v'dar. There is a physical Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. The Zohar says that. That means Moshe Rabbeinu is not like a regular tzaddik that lives on only spiritually. The uniqueness of Moshe Rabbeinu and Yaakov Avinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu is living on in the Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. The Zohar says every generation is pashtusa the Moshe b'chol dar. There's a manifestation of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu is physically alive in the tzaddik of that generation. Yaakov Avinu is physically alive through the children that are following in his footsteps. And that's the uniqueness of these two. Then when it says Yaakov Avinu, and then it said Tamid, I meant Tainus. Yaakov Avinu Leimes, the Gemara says, it means that he's still alive through the children, physically alive. In fact, you know, it says, in Sefer Chassidim is brought down, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, after he died, and there's a lot, there's not for now, it's 3 minutes left. Yeah, the Sefer Chassidim, Rabbi Yehuda Chassid says, that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, after he died, would come home every Friday night and make Kiddush for his family. And the big question was, how could a dead man make Kiddush to be Yaitzi? He's not obligated to mitzvahs. That, you know, all these, there's a lot of discussion on this. Until one day, the neighbor became aware of it, and then he stopped coming. But he's saying it with Sefer Chassidim, and Rabbi Yehuda Chassid is saying it in reference to Moshe Beinu Leimes, Yaakov Beinu Leimes. They're all things because they come physically, they're doing things in heaven for the physical welfare of the Jewish people. That you don't find by regular tzaddikim. Yeah, they're spiritually alive more than they were in their physical. But that they should affect the world like Yaakov Avinu did, and Moshe Beinu in a physical sense, that didn't exist doesn't exist by any other of the other tzaddikim. So Moshe Beinu in every generation is Yaakov Avinu, but that's basically the gist of it, of those two things. Okay, one last thing. We have a minute left. Yosef says to the brother, the brothers thought that Yosef is not going to respect them anymore after Yaakov died. So he says in Perek Nun Pasik Chof, again, we'll take to Mamas a second. Atam chashaftem alay ra. You guys thought it was bad. You wanted to kill me. You wanted to sell me as a slave. Perek Nun Pasik Chof. Alekim chashava lateva. God thought it to be good. What's Yosef saying? Yosef saying, what you did to me was awful and disgusting and a terrible thing. But you know what? It was good. Like we're learning in Tanya Shabbos morning, right? No evil comes from heaven. It's all good. You guys thought you're going to do something terrible. Why should I take revenge against you when the terrible thing you did to me was really good? So why would I do something as outrageous as that? Okay, Mitzvah Shem, Wednesday will be a halach in Tanya class. Again, today's class is sponsored by Yehuda's Greenberg in honor of her birthday, which was today. You have a Shnas Hatzlach and everything. Don't forget this Friday is Asara B'Tevis. You daven Mincha is Torah reading, Vayechi, and you break your fast Friday night when you make Kiddush. We'll talk more details in Mitzvah Shem Wednesday night.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Good night.